Thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And I was listening your speech, and it was very strong. And when it comes to like the conclusion, what do you think was the message for the White House or Congress today?
I think the message to the White House is that Congress cares about what's happening in Syria, and Congress cares about U.S. policy in Syria, and that minorities have been targeted too much, and that the fact that the Syrian government conquered the Northeast by force was something I don't think was well received either by members of Congress. So I think the sense is this January 30th agreement between the Syrian Democratic Forces and the government needs to be implemented fairly. They're watching closely to make sure that it's followed. And to bring in these minority communities, I think the key is having them have their own governance, their own security, rather than having the Syrian security forces provide that, because right now we've seen so many atrocities by them. We've seen some Islamists wearing ISIS patches. I think because of the inconsistency of these security forces, they cannot be in minority areas. And the Northeast kind of could be a model for how to deal with some other fragile areas in Syria. It's been disappointing to watch the U.S. even sign an economic deal with the Syrian government just days after these massacres against Kurds, including beheadings, rape, execution of families. These things shouldn't be happening, and the U.S. cannot be rewarding that kind of behavior. So I do think the U.S. needs to put more pressure on this government, both in a positive way, but also to have consequences for when they do commit these atrocious crimes against minorities.
But how they can like guarantee minorities' safety and rights? Like there should be like a mechanism to monitor the situation?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I think that a mechanism could be set up with Germany, with France, with the UK, and I think all those governments have agreed to be a part of something with the US to be able to monitor particularly this SDF integration agreement, so that we have a lot of eyes on this and we're watching to make sure that it's actually implemented in a fair way.
I have a last question. If you don't mind, can you share with me your view when it comes to the atrocities against women in Syria?
Yeah.
Especially, you mentioned also in your statement, they threw a dead body of female fighters from a rooftop.
Yeah, we have seen when minority communities are targeted in Syria, whether it be Druze, whether it be Alawites, whether it be the Kurds, we have seen the women pay the biggest price. Yazidis, for instance, in Afrin, the Yazidi women, of course, have been targeted even more than anyone else has been. So I do think women have paid a huge price in this violence against minority communities, and that's something the U.S. Cannot reward. And so when we're talking about all this economic support to Syria, we need to make it clear to them that they need to be hitting these benchmarks, or we're not going to be able to help them to be able to bring businesses into Syria.
Thank you very much for your time.
So thanks for having me.
Mr. Congressman, how concerned are you regarding the new transitional government in Syria, since we have seen 3 massacres, they took control of the massacres?
And indeed, it's going to be tough. The nation of Syria has had so many divisions, and then the civil war, and then the Assad dictatorship with killing 500,000 people. There could be consequences, and it's going to take time for the different communities to work together, but it's very important and very mutually beneficial for the world that we have a sovereign and stable and indeed secure, peaceful, and prosperous Syria. And so it's going to take time. And so every effort should be made. If there are any infractions, they should be reported to the highest authorities, and then they should be looked into and addressed. But the key point I want to make is that I so appreciate the success of President Donald Trump of Give Syria a Chance, and what an extraordinary envoy he has with Tom Barrack, who's there with Lebanese American heritage himself. And so he has a love and affection for the region and the people of the region, and so does President Donald Trump.
And what about the Kurdish concerns? They concerned about their own safety in Syria. And not just the Kurds, even like Alawites, Druze.
And that's indeed, there are different communities we know. Druze, Alawites, Bedouins, Kurds. But it's so important to me, and I believe it can be done, to have a government which is inclusive. Hey, that's what we did in America. We have different communities, not quite as divisive, but we have different communities too. And so you include all. And it was very encouraging to me, the agreement by the Shara government to provide for local law enforcement would be conducted by the Kurdish community. That's a huge step forward of recognition of how important the Kurdish community is for a sovereign, secure, and prosperous Syria.
One last question, very briefly. Can USA secure or guarantee Kurdish or minority safety?
Well, indeed, the main way we can do that is that if there are any infractions, to please get that to the attention of Ambassador Tom Barrack, to the American authorities, the military authorities that we have in the region too. And what we would do is indeed work with the Syrian government, work with the Kurdish community, work with our allies in the Kurdistan region, our allies, Turkey itself, NATO. And we would be working with Iraq, and Iraq already has stepped in to help. And so over and over again, there are really positive examples of peace and stability and prosperity for the people of Syria and the Kurdish region, and all the countries where the Kurdish community currently live.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's the major issue that I would be concerned about. We had the Kurds stand by us during the Iraqi war. We want to see a different mindset from the Assad regime in this new world. I'm not convinced yet we're there, and I do think that it's an open issue in my mind, and what happens on the ground is more important to me than the words that are said. If we see concrete efforts to protect the rights of minorities, that is in theory what America has stood by all these years. We should stand by that again.
Thank you very much. How confident are you about safety of minorities in Syria?
No, I'm not. They're getting slaughtered, and it's women are getting raped, and people are getting brutalized and murdered, and it's not anybody we need to do business with. I don't like doing business with the devil.
Do you think there should be a mechanism to monitor the transitional government when it comes to the safety of minorities?
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I think what we better do is just use our economic might and say we're not going to play ball with y'all. And if we're not doing business with them, the countries that are, we shut them down.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.